Back here at home, Governor Josh Green back in the islands after his trip to D.C., and he's now laying out his key priorities to the legislature. On Monday, Governor Green transmitted additional budget requests to the legislature, and those requests include support for affordable housing, infrastructure, protecting natural resources, and improving access to health care. Health care was also the main topic of discussion for Green during the National Governors Association session in D.C. last week, specifically mental health care access.
We as governors and we as a nation have to completely change our approach to healthcare, because until we fund and reimburse, like Gretchen shared, better this part of healthcare, we won't attract enough social workers, we won't attract psychologists, psychiatrists, we just won't see real change. And to the First Lady's point, we don't want to be talking about this again 5 and 10 years out. So I think we have to make that commitment, because our adolescents are dying of suicide, they're not dying of heart disease. Our adolescents and their families are suffering because of this lack of commitment to behavioral health, which is now so prevalent.
That speech getting a applause in that room when Governor Green was in D.C. And to talk more about his priorities and his time in Washington, D.C. is Governor Josh Green. He's joining us here on Good Morning Hawaii this morning. Thank you for being here, Governor.
Thank you, and happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day to you, too. I see you're not wearing any pink or red.
Well, not that you can see.
Well, as you know, we just played that soundbite from your time in Washington, D.C. So let's start there. I know you celebrated a birthday,
yes.
So happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
But talk to me about your time there with all of the governors, and I know talking about mental health was a huge thing, and a lot of governors felt the same way as you.
Yeah, it was an extraordinary trip. Of course, meeting the president and his cabinet is special, because I can tell them what we are fighting for in Hawaii and get them to be on our side, which they will be. But being with the governors was special because, in spite of it being 50-50 Republican and Democrat, I was able to bring them together. And what I'm doing is I'm going to a space that we all know we have to work on, and that's the mental health care and well-being of our keiki, our adolescents, our kupuna, everybody. It was a common ground, and I want to build common ground, so I talked a lot about that. Now, we found common ground on housing and homelessness also, but I wanted to establish my reputation with them as someone who would build bridges, and that appears to be what happened. We had a pretty good response.
And as you know, you told me you got to speak to the president himself. You spoke to also several high-profile people who lead different organizations for our nation, including, you talked about housing.
Yes.
We also have a huge problem with homelessness here in our state, and I know we're not the only ones. So as you talked to these people, what are we kind of hoping they'll be able to help us with here at home?
Well, right off the bat, I met with the HUD secretary, that's the housing leader, Marcia Fudge. She's fantastic. We bonded completely. Interestingly, I did a little whiteboard in her conference room. She said to me, most governors come in and they're kind of like, kind of deer in the headlights because it's not their area of expertise. But we really were able to have a meeting of the minds. She told us immediately there was an additional $3 million that we hadn't spent yet, which we can spend on Kauhale. So I shared that with James Koshiba on our team right away. And there's going to be large amounts of resource from pretty much infrastructure side, housing side, things that Hawaii will need. And that's the purpose of going and bonding with, the director of HUD, the director of transportation, which is Pete Buttigieg. Right. We call him Mayor Pete, right? We spent a ton of time together. The Health and Human Services Secretary, I told him that I think we should move towards national loan forgiveness and national health service that people might do to repay their debt and then come and work in rural areas like Hawaii. So it was extraordinary to have those conversations.
And as you know, as you were there at the nation's capital, and now you're back home, and we are in the midst of a new legislative session.
Yes.
How do you see your priorities that you want to accomplish during your term? Do you see those types of things working their way through the legislature right now?
They are. It's sometimes good, sometimes not as good. Look, the people sent me into this job and to DC for last week to do a few things, to work on housing, to work on affordability, and to work on homelessness. Plus lots of other important issues like education, but climate's out there too. But these are the focus, right? Housing, affordability, and homelessness. And when I come back, we have to navigate getting the job done. People don't want to see the kind of fights and bullying that's been breaking out at the legislature. And let me be very direct. Most of the legislators they want to work together to these to find solutions to end some of these problems. But you will see some of that play out today. For instance, Ikaika Anderson, a very good person, has been nominated by me to be the chair of the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. $600 million to build houses for the Hawaiian community. There's a big fight going on over him, but it's based on old grudges. It's based on politics. And, you know, frankly, if I may be direct, there's bullying going on. I don't accept that. I want to say it very directly. There should be no bullying. We should be allowed to do our job. That's why people want us in these positions of leadership. And if there's going to be that kind of attitude, I'm going to call it out for what it is, because our problems are too big to waste time on petty politics. So they should let us do our job. I just met with the national leadership, including the president and vice president, and I'll keep doing that. But I can only get the job done if people cooperate with me here at home. I will reasonable to a T. We will fight for the legislators' priorities for sure. I love what they're doing. I can already see Speaker Psyche working hard on our affordability plan to increase the tax credits so people in the ALICE category who are poor get some big tax breaks. I think the Senate will go along also. I really appreciate Senator Koji and his leadership. I'm seeing both those leaders this morning. But you know, when the mob mentality starts and people start throwing stones, it's not good. And people who live in glass houses should not throw stones. So let's get together, work through these problems, but let us do our job for our people.
And you mentioned Ikaika Anderson there, and that, of course, being presented today for his role for the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. But we've also seen some things with legislators and the University of Hawaii president, David Lassner. We've also had some other incidents already in this legislative session. So how do we move past this so-called bullying? Do you think we're going to be able to move past that to actually get work done?
Oh, we will definitely move past it eventually. It depends how much light we shine on it, honestly. It was completely unacceptable to see Nani Medeiros bullied, but I did appreciate when Senator Favela apologized. That was important. The other day, 3 senators came out against the president of the university. And whether you love or hate the president of the university, it's our job to support the university. It's our job to let the Board of Regents do their task and do their job and to recommend these people. These guys have so much work to do in the Senate and the House. There should be none of this. There should be no bullying. And I'm going to call it out over and over again. And I'm going to call it out directly. So we can move forward as a state to help people, or we can watch these games play out, this kind of bullying at the legislature. And it's not okay. It's not cool. It's not for Valentine's Day, I can tell you for sure. And really, people deserve better from us. So we will see how people vote. But today, Ikaika Anderson is going to get support from past governors, community leaders, people of great influence and then I bet you anything the mob's going to come in and really say things that are tough and mean about him. And I hope that the senators sift through that and vote him up, because they are bound to help us as a state. We're not supposed to play politics with these people. So I hope with all of my heart that people will be kind and generous to one another, because right now there are people out there that don't have a home. There are people that are homeless on the street. There are kids. And none of those fights help anybody. But I'll keep going, fighting for resources for us. And I will put together policies that will truly help our ohana. But I can only do so much. And so I rely on the partnership. And I will always reach out to the senators and reps to make sure that they know I care about them, but they have to be kind.
Well, thank you, Governor Green. Of course, we're going to see how all of this does play out in the state capitol today. But thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.